DC Comics would like people to believe that Harley Quinn is just one of the best-selling characters that they have out there. Now, that is true sort of sometimes. Right now, Harley Quinn's not selling very well, but they are about to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Harley Quinn, obviously introduced in the animated series, and they have big plans, but we do need to talk about the state of Harley Quinn right now, and who better to do that with than the DC aficionado himself. Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. We just had like a fun 20-minute session going through Build-A-Bear. So,
Build-A-Bear Harley Quinn, yes.
I know, yeah. Why not? No, I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm actually kind of looking forward to discussing this because I want to get your opinion. Because I had an opinion and then I did some reading and, my opinion changed a little bit. So.
Well, let's talk about the state of the character right now. Her ongoing series does not sell from Stephanie Phillips and Riley Rossmo. They are about to change artists. They're about to do like a 4-issue, like weekly event story. That's a terrible idea. I don't know what they're thinking, but they are going through with that before this 30th anniversary thing. Yeah. But the character does still sell kind of on Black Label. They had the Harleen series. They had the Kami Garcia thing that went out and stuff. So there is a way to make money off this character, but I think you kind of have to have more edgy stories and whatnot. And I think they've been so determined to not let her be a villain, even though that's what the way people kind of prefer the character, where she works best in the DC universe, that they've almost sabotaged the character.
I agree. The character's in an interesting spot narratively because I don't think DC fully knows what to do with her because they keep trying to straddle this line of good and bad, good and bad, good and bad. We don't want you to be a villain, but we want you to do the crazy, wacky, outlandish shit that you do that people love, typically with a humorous slant to it. And then, hey, you're popular, so we can't have you be too terrible. And I think, discussing her popularity is something that we need to look at closely as well, because a lot of Harley's popularity isn't necessarily even in comic book sales. And yes, she's had some decent runs over time, especially Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti's run. It did relatively well. But the big bucks here, it's in merchandise. It's not really in storytelling. There's a lot of knick-knack things. Like if you go into a Hot Topic, you're going to see like a shit ton of Harley Quinn stuff in there. And for reason, like it consistently sells. People like the character. It's a good-looking character in multiple forms. So people are drawn to it. But I think you're right. When it comes to how she's represented, I think most people prefer the not so good Harley Quinn, and you can still keep her a little zany, but like stop the hero, stop trying to make her a hero. It's not working.
And I know this has been an ongoing conversation. Maybe there's only one answer now, but through the years for DC Comics, I know you talked to people before in the past, but like, what are the plans with Harley Quinn? Why does the character feel so schizophrenic when you read her, depending on where she is? It almost feels like a different character. And it's because nobody had the same idea of what to do with her, right?
Correct. Yeah, there's a lot of opposing ideas. And then, there was a big push and a big stance, which we're still seeing today, to not make her a villain. And I'll just put it that way. When that conversation was happening, there were conversations of, okay, but if we look at this logically and we want to try to make her heroic or try to redeem her, she's killed people. You can't ever like fully make her a hero.
She killed an entire school of kids, right?
Yeah, I mean, like she's done terrible things time and time again. The point I'm trying to make is that because she's done these things and because of her identity as Harley Quinn, if you were going to make her good and have her reject the Joker and what he stands for, then she would no longer be Harley Quinn. She wouldn't dress that way. She would come up with a different name. And then the moment that was brought up as the logical projection for her as a anti-hero, I guess, then it was just kind of like, nope, we can't do that. And you had this like wacky, fun Deadpool type slant put on her, and that sold really well and it did well, but it's run its course. So they need to figure something out because the character has hit a wall and it's just causing sales to drop drastically.
Really, the only writer that I've seen that's really tackled the issue and made it kind of sensical is Sean Gordon Murphy within his Batman White Knight universe, where you had the original Harley Quinn who was abused and manipulated by Joker. Along the way, he didn't even realize that she left him. And then another Harley Quinn that was evil came in and replaced her, and he didn't even care because he didn't care about her. He just wanted the sidekick, and she kind of rehabilitated herself while the other really evil one did all the bad things and was really the bad version. And he made it make sense, within the story, but that's only in the Murphyverse. You can't really do that in the DC Comics universe.
No, I think some of honestly, the best interpretations of Harley Quinn that I've read are the interpretations that aren't in main continuity, at least currently, newer stuff. So you've got the Murphyverse, you've got Harleen, which was Black Label. And then I actually loved Harley Quinn in the Injustice series. I thought she was a lot of fun. And I thought Tom Taylor, of all people, handled her well because he wrote her from the stance of she's bad, like she's not a good guy, but she has a limit to what she will allow at this point in her life. So she had made decisions like, whatever, this is fine, but these things I'm going to draw a line with moving forward. And that's how he wrote the character, and it worked. And she was never viewed as a hero, but she was viewed as someone that could be beneficial from time to time. And I think that's one of the things that writers haven't really taken advantage of post her leaving Joker is if you wanted to make her a villain, she's a highly intelligent person. And she's a psychologist, and you could have a very good psychological character that just toys with people and just ruins their life. Joker, you never know what he's thinking. He's just a wild card. Harley wouldn't be a wild card. Harley would be extremely calculated. And if you had those two opposing in a way, you would have one hell of a villain duo, even if they're not on the same side. Just it could be terrifying for Gotham.
I think DC Comics has made a lot of creative decisions with the character that has made her annoying to fans. Not just the way that she speaks and whatnot, but the things that she's allowed to do. Mm-hmm. The biggest example for me is in Heroes in Crisis. Tom King was able to essentially have Harley Quinn defeat the Trinity single-handedly. At the same exact time, she beat Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. And people are like, I fucking hate this character. Can you get her away from me? Because I don't want to see this stupid things anymore. This is beyond ridiculous. Yet they continuously do crap like that to really dare fans not to hate the character.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was a situation that Harley rightfully gained a lot of momentum because she was being represented well for a long time. And then DC was kind of like, oh, you guys love this character? Awesome. We'll make her OP. Here we go. And then it just became a nightmare. She became the character that nobody really wanted to see pop up in books, and then she just kept popping up in random books.
Every book.
Yes. And, I hear a lot of people talk about comic fatigue in general, but with Harley, there was blatantly Harley fatigue, where I had people that enjoyed the character but didn't want to read books, and they would take months off and then would trade wait and just read a trade and catch up and all right, I'm good for another 6 months. Next.
Yeah, so I think DC has done a lot of long-term damage to Harley Quinn. We've seen the character hasn't blown up in movies like you would have expected, even with Margot Robbie and whatnot. Let's check in on some of the details of the 30th anniversary celebration that they're doing. Harleen Frances Quinzel, a.k.a. Harley Quinn, made her debut on the small screen on Joker's Favor, the 22nd episode of the landmark animated series Batman the Animated Series on September 11th, 1992. Which, of course, means DC will celebrate her 30th anniversary in September in the Harley Quinn 30th Anniversary Special, a prestige format 96-page one-shot anthology that will go on sale September 13th, just 2 days shy of the actual special day. You know what's interesting about this is normally on a 30th anniversary, they wouldn't get the 100-page special. That's for an 80th anniversary. Yep. And it's one of the reasons I think it really turns people off, because they're treating her like she's been around as long as Wonder Woman or something like that, or she's as important, and they're just going overboard and expecting people to pay $11 for this comic.
Yeah. I mean, I think at this point they're trying to hold on to whatever sales they can get. And Harley, outside of comics, is, like I said, still selling really well. So I think
it will be an anniversary special, and it'll have a great cover. It'll have 10 covers. Yeah.
I think when you look at the fact that she sells well overall, even outside of comics, that's one of the reasons she's getting this book presented in this way. And I will say, when I first heard this, my original thought was, oh God, here we go again. Because DC has had a knack lately for whenever they try to do anything like this, they just throw on their crummy writers that they currently have on all their books that just shouldn't be writing comics because they're not good enough. But here they're actually being careful in their selection of who they get. They're pulling people back who have written Harley Quinn in the past and done it well. They do have Stephanie Phillips on there. She's the current writer.
Let's go through the whole lineup.
Yeah,
let's go through all of them. I got the list right here. We've got Amanda Connor, Jimmy Palmiotti, Stephanie Phillips, Stepan Sijic, Sam Humphries, KB Garcia, Rob Williams, Mindy Lee, Terry Dodson, Cecil Castellucci, Raphael Scavone, and yes, of course, Paul Dini. As far as the artists, we've got Chad Harden, Guillaume March, Riley Rossmo, Stepan Sijic, Erica Henderson, Jason Bedauer, Miko Suyan, John Timms, Dodson, Rachel Dodson, Dan Hipp, and Raphael Albuquerque. So yes, there are a few creators in there that I don't think, like, why would you put them on this? But for the most part, you have people that are really associated with the character that have done really good things. The only one I could think of maybe bringing in maybe would be a Gail Simone to do a Birds of Prey story or something like that. But for the most part, I think they got a lot of the writers that did good work on the character.
Yeah, you could do Gail Simone, or you could bring in Gotham City Sirens in some way. I think Gotham City Sirens is the thing that feels like it's missing the most. But I would say overall, I'm excited, or interested at least, to see what more than half of these creators bring to the table, as opposed to like, oh, there's one story I might enjoy. So that's a nice change of pace. But the Dodsons wrote Harley Quinn, and they had a short run on Harley title prior to the New 52. The New 52 launched. You had Palmiotti and Connor do their take, which, I mean, sales-wise for comics really blew up. I think it's the best that Harley has ever sold. So I understand them. Paul Dini, always welcome. Stepan Sijic, I mean, this is the guy that's responsible for Harleen. So I will take anything he has to bring to the table.
Fantastic. So you've got too.
Yeah, and incredible artist. And you've got good things here in the lineup. Kami Garcia, I'm not the biggest fan of hers, but she's done a lot of great YA stuff that sold well, so I understand her place in this book. So
and her Harley Joker Criminal Sanity, at least initially before it was delayed, was selling good for like an $8 comic book. Yes.
Yeah, and it was also a beautiful book that was illustrated incredibly well. There's the chance to have really good content here, and because of that, I will applaud DC, because it looks like they're not trying to go the cheapest route possible for this, and I think that's what these characters deserve.
Yeah, you would expect Cena Grace, you would expect a Vita Ayala story in there. A lot of the the lower hanging fruit as far as DC Comics talent, they like to throw them in there on the end just as filler, so they can make it 100 pages and charge you a lot of money for some bad stories. So
I'm happy that's not the case.
So it should be interesting. I mean, I do think they should celebrate the 30th anniversary of Harley Quinn. The character merits it. The notoriety, the amount of things that she's done in comic books absolutely warrant it. But I do think DC has not handled the character very well. Mm-hmm. We see that in the sales of the ongoing series. I just don't think Stephanie Phillips and Riley Rossmo were a good creative pairing. I don't know what they were thinking with that. Yeah. They certainly nosedive sales, but I do believe people will be interested in this. And Harley Quinn is a cool character. And I imagine we will be getting the different sides of Harley Quinn, because there's been far too many interpretations of this character. Even if you want to say she's maniacal, or, there are different aspects, and you can kind of talk about the trauma that she's received at Joker. It's like they need to have a better plan for the character. She probably deserves it. And she certainly should be moving more comic books than she is today. Absolutely.
And you talked about them having a better plan for her. Honestly, DC needs to have a better plan for most of their characters at this point. Like that's where they need to go. Square one needs to be, what's our plan for the characters? But Harley Quinn in particular, like, it's a character that has some momentum. So if it's got some momentum, you might as well take advantage of it.
As Josh just mentioned, DC Comics needs a better plan with a lot of characters outside of Batman and the Batman family. A lot of characters are struggling, and even some within the Batman family, like a Harley Quinn. I recently did a video kind of talking about some of the people responsible for the terrible creative decisions, the group editors, the writers, and whatnot. And Harley Quinn's definitely one of the characters we had to highlight, because the sales are just putrid for a character that popular.